So welcome to fourth talk that we are conducting this year with our key customers. So today it would be a session with one of our key customers, Stadler. The takeaways that you can expect from this session would be some guidance, tips, and best experience shared about onboarding a machine translation solution at enterprises or organizations. So I am very happy today to interview Antonio, application manager at Stadler, one of our key customers and early adopters of MT. Hi, Antonio. Very nice to have you.
Thank you, Paul. Hi, everyone.
So last time we met in Paris, it was Swiss Franc Community Day. How are you today? Are you joining us from Switzerland?
Today I'm in Switzerland, yes, back to Switzerland.
Great. So very happy to have this session with you. Just before starting, I would like to remind a few things. So this webinar would be recorded. You will get also access to the recording in a few days. All the participants, of course, are on mute. So if you have any questions, feel free to write them down on the chat panel. We have already allocated 15 minutes of question answer session at the end of the presentation. So, Antonio, for the people who know little or don't know Stadler, could you just give us some key elements to present Stadler, please?
Yes, so Stadler is a Swiss manufacturer of railway rolling stock and also provider of service and signaling technology. We have our headquarters in Switzerland, in Bussnang, where I'm presenting from now, but we have locations basically all over the world in 23 countries, and we have customers. We sell trains in 43 countries, so all over the 5 continents. We have more than 13,000 employees, and we, as a company, we cover all segments of the railway rolling stock market, except from very few exceptions.
Okay. So yeah, I guess having operations in 43 countries and 5 continents will lead me to the next question. Probably the translation is a key element in your business, I guess.
Yes, of course it is. As a global company, of course, we have customers all over the world, and along the trains we deliver, of course, the technical documentation pertaining to the trains. This technical documentation is usually written either in German or English, and then we translate it to the language of our customers. So we're talking about really thousands of pages of documentation per train. So we have very high needs, very high translation needs there. And these technical documentation, as I said, is on the one side, it's part of the product. It's part of the product we deliver to the customer. And on the other side, it's also very important and crucial for authorization purposes in the respective country for the trains to roll in the country. Therefore, we have very high quality standards there. And yeah, we have, of course, other translation needs apart from strictly the technical documentation that we deliver to the customer. We have the usual translation needs that a global company has. Of course, we have employees all over the world, so we have internal and external communication, which is multilingual. We have to translate. We're talking about all kinds of texts, marketing texts, engineering texts, of course, confidential information and patent pending information sometimes. So it's very critical there. Since we have such very high translation needs, we have also a translation team in the company, which is in the documentation department. And the translation team basically serves as a language service provider for the whole company and all the Stadler locations. So we have project managers, we have 1 terminologist, and we have 2 application managers where we manage, of course, the tools that our translators and our employees are using for translation.
Okay, so all this to handle internal communication content, but also the content that you would be sharing with your customers or shared with your partners, external stakeholders, actually.
Exactly. So everything we translate goes through the translation team. But of course, we have also possibilities for the employees to use to do translation on their own using MT, using machine translation.
Okay. So while you are serving your internal, let's say external customers, I guess there are some challenges for sure, as any usual business needs, it comes with some challenges. What challenges you identified during this process?
So as I said, in general, we have very high translation volumes, and these volumes are continuously increasing. We have every year we have new projects and we have more customers. So also the amount of documentation we have to translate increases over the years. And we have, of course, as I said, huge volumes, but we have sometimes also critical use cases where these big volumes have to be translated within very tight deadlines. For example, for comprehension purposes and decision-taking purposes. One example is one of our biggest use cases for translation and machine translation, which is the translation of calls for tenders. So when a country issues a call for tender for buying a certain amount of trains, certain number of trains, we have to translate this documentation pertaining to the call of tender very fast, because it's critical for decision-taking purposes. So in this case, high volumes, huge volumes, but also very fast translations needed. Of course, we have other challenges which are linked intrinsically with the fact that we're a big global company. So we have our content has to be accessible to in different languages, and we have to communicate with with employees all over the world in different locations. And sometimes of course, we have the need to make contents accessible in different languages, for example, also databases or certain tools. In all these, the main focus is, of course, on data security, because a lot of our information that we translate and we share is confidential and pertains to our products. So this is where having a solution which has a very high data security comes into the function, let's say, and where it becomes very critical. These are the 4 challenges that we have.
Okay, so to tackle these challenges, actually, it led you through a machine translation solution, because this is where we can tackle this kind of challenges, of course. And so you had the idea to implement machine translation. What was the first or very early steps that helped you to adopt actually a machine translation solution to tackle these challenges?
Yes, we had, of course, to evaluate different MT providers, starting from all these needs that I showed you before. We had, of course, we found a solution in MT. We said, okay, we have such huge translation needs, and there are going to be use cases where we're going to need machine translation to tackle these challenges. So we are quite an early adopter of MT. We adopted Systran in 2016 first. So when it was still on the verge of becoming a neural, where we were about to switch from statistical to neural. And of course, we evaluated different MT providers. There were different parameters that, of course, an MT provider had to have for us to choose it. But again, our journey started quite early, 2016. Then we rolled out the whole machine translation system with Systran in 2018 for the whole company.
Yeah, I think I would like just to elaborate more about the evaluation part, because I think this is a critical aspect here. From what we see, actually, from my team and the other prospects, potential clients contacting us, usually this part is not very mature. In the case there, the people are looking for a machine translation, but when we ask for what are your objectives, what are the, let's say, the selection criteria, usually it's not very well defined. So that's why I would like to elaborate here what was the work done on your side. So what criteria you have set actually to choose the right machine translation, or let's say the most adapted one for your use cases. I guess the quality is very obvious, like this is the first thing that we would check, but maybe there are more also other interesting things that you have considered.
Of course, the machine translation landscape is huge. We have a huge number of providers, but there are many key differentiators that play a big role, and especially when someone is choosing, when a company is choosing an empty provider, there are some aspects that have to be taken into account. Of course, you mentioned quality, which is of course number one. One of the most important reasons, because of course we're going to try to have a solution which has the highest possible quality. Yes, in this respect, of course, Systran, as a pioneer in machine translation solutions, was positioned very high. Another very important and crucial aspect is, of course, data security. So we needed a solution that was compliant with our data security regulations, and yes, that allowed us to be really like to have a solution which is really secure. Another key differentiator, another key factor for us was the number of language pairs available, because, as I said, we translate in many languages, into many languages, and from many languages. So, apart from the customers that are in many countries, we have, of course, employees in many countries. In general, now we have 138 language combinations for our machine translation tools. So this gives more or less an idea of the language pairs we needed and we need. So this was another key point for us to tend towards Systran. Of course, a solution that we were looking for needed to be perfectly integrated into our TMS system, into our translation management system. And of course, also the possibility of having an API integration, which was adaptable, which allowed us to integrate Systran into our own software solutions, plays an important role. Something that we're focusing more and more, and which I see now as probably the biggest key differentiator of Systran, is the ability to customize the engines that we have. Because on the one hand, we can seamlessly integrate terminology in all of our engines, in all of our language pairs, so we don't have limitations there. The terminology integration works very well. We can integrate other language data and translation data, so translation memories, which also help to enhance the quality on the one side, but also like help to be consistent also when we apply machine translation. And of course, the possibility to train our own engines with our data, with our translation memories. This is possible with the Systran Model Studio, which we started using last year. So now, in the last 2 years, we were able to customize a lot our engines, and of course, this had a huge impact also in quality and in the acceptability also of the usage of MT.
Okay. Thanks. That's very clear. Actually, if we were to resume it, so if my understanding is well, you have the quality related part in your expectations. There are the functional part, and also all this under a secured solution. So I guess these are usually the main things to evaluate that are important. Of course, the importance or the percentage of this could vary from one use case, from one organization to other, but in any case, it resumes very well what should be taken into consideration. So let's suppose that you have find the best fit solution, you choose the MT, deployed it. Can you now just explain us, if we come back to the quality part, how your workflow looks today. So could you just briefly describe it for us?
Yes, of course. So we have built up quite a robust empty workflow, or better, customization workflow in our case. Of course, we start from the generic stock models that Systrum provides, and we have a big planning where we decide, okay, which language pairs we want to train, which language pairs we need to train. So when this applies, when we decide to train a specific language pair, we have specific steps that we follow. Of course, we have to collect data internally. We do some data augmentation. Of course, we do a big part of data cleaning and data repair. So we have our training data ready. We usually, for our language pairs, we have somewhere between 50,000 sentence pairs and 500,000 sentence pairs for the biggest language pairs. So we have quite a lot of data internally, and that's we're happy to use it, and that's also what brings the most in terms of quality. So we do the training, as I said, using Model Studio, and of course, when we train, we do a first quality evaluation to see how much the quality improved just thanks to the training. We do this with the usual evaluation metrics, and we do sentence level evaluation, we do system level evaluation. So we already assess a first, let's say, an idea of how much the engine got better, improved. Afterwards, we always integrate terminology in all of our engines. We have a big focus on terminology as a company in general. We have a terminologist, as I said. We have a very big terminology database. There is a lot of work behind the terminology database. We have 17 languages and more than 100,000 terms there. And in the last 2 years, we also started to work on terminology management also from a machine translation perspective. So to do a more machine translation compliant terminology management, which also allows us to seamlessly integrate the terminology in the engines. So more into the specific, more into the details, we basically have to select the terms that we want for the MT in our terminology database, and then we define these terms as MT compliant to be used for the MT, and then afterwards we are able to create glossaries on the fly in any of the language pairs that we have defined for new engines. And this allows us to integrate terminology very fast, and especially to keep it up to date, because we can potentially create new glossaries every week or every day if there are any changes in terminology. So this is also a big differentiator, because we really notice a big improvement in quality if the right terminology is used. And when we're talking about technical contents as in the railway domain, that's very important. Of course, we have a life cycle quality evaluation, which goes on and on according to the feedback of the users, of the post editors. We do also terminology evaluation specifically, so we see, let's say, after integrating specific terminology, if the results are really what we expect in the output, in the empty output. If not, we can go back and adapt the data, adapt the terminology that we integrate. So this is quite circular as a process. Of course, the first step of the training only takes part when we decide to train, but the second and the third step, they happen for all of our engines. So all of our more than 150 engines that we have, we do the second and the third step that we describe here.
Okay, so here we see it like a simple 3 steps, but I guess it's a quite well-structured workflow. So you have this workflow in place, then I guess the idea is to onboard languages or models, as you said, maybe phase by phase, and then put them in this workflow, which helps you to continue to improve the quality ongoing and give possibility to onboard new languages, if I understood that. So during the when we were in Paris for Citroën Community Day, you talk about your language models as our empty fleet. So I would like to learn more about how this fleet, actually empty fleet, all these models helped you at Stadler, because I guess you had some KPIs or let's say return of investment monitoring on these models. Could you just briefly tell us what benefits you have empty?
Of course, yes. So we do a lot of machine translation right now. We see also an increase in the use of machine translation over the years. Right now, last year we translated over 100 million words in 1 year with machine translation. Of course, we have different key figures when we're talking about cost and time savings, because according to the project and according to the use case, we have use cases where we use raw empty instead of human translation for comprehension purposes. And there we have, of course, a huge cost saving and also huge time saving of up to 90%. Of course, when we're talking about machine translation post-editing, we have a cost reduction, which is not so consistent, but we have up to, let's say, 50% of the costs that we can save thanks to machine translation post-editing compared to our standard. But again, the main focus there is on the turnaround time, so the time we save thanks to machine translation. I want to specify that in general, we still use human translation as a standard for the documentation that we translate for the customer. So that's really our standard, where we have human translation with 4 eyes principle, which we manage either internally or externally in our team. And then, of course, we have the use cases where we have like very urgent translation projects or like calls for tenders or other use cases that I showed before, where, of course, we apply machine translation. You talked about our empty fleet. We have in total, as I said, more than 150 engines right now in 138 language pairs, unique language pairs. Out of these 150 engines, we trained 24 of them using our translation data, our terminology, and this was in the last 2 years. When we train the engines, as I said, we do, of course, evaluation. We want to see how much the improvement is. Here in the graph, you can see it for most of our language pairs. We have, in general, we observe an improvement which is, of course, statistically significant, but also like very consistent. We're talking about more than 20 bleu points. We still use bleu since it is a standard, an industry standard, but we also use other metrics like Comet, like character F3, like H-Leper. We also do sentence level evaluation, but of course bleu is still like industry standard, so we use bleu, but then we corroborate it with human evaluations and other metrics. Yeah.
Okay, so these trained models, as you said, they're also combined with your own linguistic resources. Okay, so thanks for these details. I mean, in terms of results and quality management part, everything looks on track. So the question that would follow, so what's next? What plans do you have actually to be able to scale up this project? You talk about languages, the language numbers, but what else that you are looking to extend this project?
Yes. Of course, we think we are at a good point right now with our empty strategy. Let's say we train a lot of models, but of course we have on our roadmap the goal to train all key language pairs that we have at Stadler. So the languages we translate most, also either for our locations abroad, but also in general for the customers. So we have an overview of the languages we have the highest translation needs, and we have as a goal to collect as much data as possible and to keep training all of our key language pairs. Of course, we will have to collect our language data management is central, so we have already all our data which is managed centrally by our application managers. But we see it as a goal also to keep collecting data from the locations which are still outside our management right now, let's say. Of course, we're going to keep working on quality, especially to achieve a higher user acceptability of MT in the company. As I said, right now we are using still human translation as a standard. So maybe a higher user acceptability, a higher quality could open up new scenarios in the future, and more use cases, for example, also applying AI for automatic post-editing or pre-editing or quality estimation. These are all things that we have in our roadmap for a future where we're going to use even more machine translation in the company. Of course, we try to we open up for new use cases, for new content types. We are trying also to integrate the Cistern API in all of our tools that we develop internally at Stadler. And this is also very important. We did it so far in a couple of projects and it was very successful. And we're going to try to keep doing it, yes.
Okay, so there are still many possibilities. Looks like you are at the beginning of your MT journey, and that's great because it means that you have the experience with the content that you handle today with MT, and this experience could be shared internally for new, let's say, use cases, and to onboard new content, new users within Stadler. So thanks, that was a good resume. So before taking some questions from the audience, I would have a last question. Would you be able to share like top three hints and tips for the listeners that are looking for a trigger actually to launch an MT project in their company, in their organizations? I would like to know what you see as the most important three points.
Yes. As I said, today we have a very broad MT landscape. We have a lot of providers, but if I can choose some tips to give, of course, you have to focus on your priorities, on the points that are important for the company. So what you're looking for, you have to consider all your expectation and needs in advance. So you have really to have your ideas clear, what you're looking for, what you're focusing on more. Of course, something that you can't forget is data security. It's always crucial when we're talking about confidential data and personal data. So this is, of course, a key aspect to be taken into account. From my point of view, something that is today really a key differentiator is the ability to do customization, in a flexible way, to do it internally, and be able to integrate, again, your own language data, your own terminology. And yes, as I said, the MT landscape is very broad. We have very high quality for different providers and different language pairs, but the point where you can achieve a really big quality jump or a leap in quality is when you're able to customize the engines with your own data.
Great, thanks for these tips. And now, if you would like, we can take some questions from the audience. Let's check what questions we have. So yeah, the first question for you from Christelle. How many PMs do you have, Antonio?
Okay, yeah. In our team, yes. In our team, we have 3 project managers. And then we have 1 terminologist, as I said, and then we are 2 application managers. We take care of machine translation, but we also take care of our TMS, of our translation management system. We also take care of our technical writing tool. We have a tool that our technical writers use, and we're also application managers for that. Of course, we do a lot for our terminology database and our translation memory. Our project managers, as I said, there are 3. They also translate content sometimes, but the most of the content is then externalized.
Okay. Another question from Victoria. Hi, how is the automatic UD creation, and it stands for the user dictionary, step happens on your side?
Yes, it happens on our side. It starts from our terminology database. As I said, we have the terminology database, and then we add metadata attributes for every term that we want for to use as a user dictionary in the MT. And based on this metadata in the terminology database and based on some scripts that we do in-house, we are able to create the user dictionary automatically according to these attributes. And we can do this flexibly for any language pair we want. So we structured our workflow and our scripts in a way that we are able to align the terms as we want them. For example, acronyms are aligned with acronyms. The long forms of the term is aligned with the long form of the term. And this only happens, again, for the terms that we have already selected for MT. I hope this replies to the question.
Thank you. Another, I won't say that it's a question, but maybe a good notification is about for those who haven't worked with the MT before, please define the industry quality score, the blue score. Yeah, actually we talk about blue score as if all ones knew about the blue score, but actually the blue score is a metric on the machine translation side, which calculate the distance between the machine output and proposed human reference. So as Antonio, you also mentioned, this is one of the scores that is used for evaluation, automatic evaluation, but then it could be combined, and this is also recommended to combine it with human evaluation or other scores, right? Do you agree with this point, or do you have anything?
Yes, yes, absolutely, yes. As you said, blue score is a good initial indicator of the quality of an engine, but of course you have to combine it with human evaluation.
Another question, how did you implement your terminology into Systran's MT solution? I think this is something that you mentioned in the previous question.
Yes, exactly. We do this with the glossaries that are called user dictionaries in Systran, and you have the possibility to integrate one or more glossaries for each engine that you have, for each profile that you have in Systran. So yes, it follows the whole workflow that I showed before. And it's of course based on our terminology database. And yeah.
Great. Thanks, Antonio. I think all this information was very helpful, and thank for being very open and sharing it with the listeners. I think it would be they will give them good ideas. And in any case, please feel free to contact us if you have any more questions. We would be happy also to share the experience of our customers. So thank you very much, Antonio, for your time today. It was a great session.
Thank you, Paul. It was very nice to have a chat.